They called me janitor girl and threw champagne in my face at the corporate gala. My fiancé's family said I wasn't good enough for their bloodline, but when armed men stormed that ballroom and I unzipped my catering uniform to reveal what I really was, their laughter died in their throats. If you've ever been underestimated, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets intense. My name is Raina Ashford, and I've been living two lives for the past 3 years. By day, I'm supposedly a freelance event coordinator. Simple. Forgettable. The kind of job that makes people's eyes glaze over at dinner parties. But that's exactly the point. Because what I really do, what I've spent 7 years training for, is something I can never talk about. I'm a captain in an elite counterterrorism unit. The kind of operator who gets called when everything else has failed. The kind who slips into hostile territory while everyone else is sleeping and makes sure the bad guys never see morning. My hands have steadied sniper rifles on rooftops in cities you've heard about on the news. I've run tactical operations in 3 different countries. I've saved lives that will never know I existed. And I've done it all in silence because that's what the job demands. Complete anonymity, total commitment, no personal glory, no recognition, just the mission. But here's the thing about living in shadows. It makes building a normal life nearly impossible. That's why when I met Dashiell Crane 8 months ago, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could have both worlds. He was charming, successful, the kind of man who lit up a room when he walked in. We met at a charity hospital event where I was volunteering in my civilian cover. He was there representing his family's pharmaceutical empire, Crane Industries' old money, real power. The kind of wealth that gets buildings named after you. He pursued me like I was the only woman in the world. Flowers at my door, handwritten notes, late-night conversations that stretched until dawn, and God, I wanted to believe in it. I wanted to believe that someone could love the version of me I was allowed to show them. So when he proposed after 6 months, kneeling in his family's rose garden with a ring that probably cost more than my annual salary, I said yes, knowing I was giving him a fraction of the truth. I said yes, hoping it would be enough. But then I met his family. The Cranes don't just have money, they have legacy generational wealth that comes with expectations, standards, and a very specific idea of who belongs in their world. His mother, Lorelei, examined me like I was a flawed diamond she was considering returning cold blue eyes that catalogued every imperfection. His father, Thornton, barely acknowledged my existence, like I was part of the furniture, and his sister, Verity, made it her personal mission to remind me I didn't belong. That first dinner at their estate felt like an interrogation. Lorelei asked about my family, my background, my career prospects. Every answer I gave felt insufficient because I couldn't tell them the truth. I couldn't say that I'd spent the last month extracting intelligence from a terrorist cell, that I spoke 4 languages fluently because my life depended on it, that the reason I seemed vague about my work was because it was classified at the highest levels of government. Instead, I watched Lorelei's lips thin with disappointment. I heard her whisper to Dashiell in the hallway, "She's not one of us, darling." And I felt my fiancé's hand slip away from mine just slightly, just enough to let me know that maybe, just maybe, love wasn't going to be enough after all. 3 weeks before the wedding, my commander called me into his office with an assignment that felt like the universe had a sick sense of humor. Crane Industries was hosting their annual gala, and intelligence suggested that several high-value targets would be in attendance. Arms dealers posing as legitimate businessmen, the kind of people who fund terrorism while sipping $1,000 champagne. My job was to go undercover as catering staff, blend into the background, and gather intelligence. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd be serving drinks at my future in-laws event, wearing a simple uniform while my fiancé mingled with the elite. But orders are orders, and the mission always comes first. I couldn't tell Dashiell. Operational security meant I couldn't tell anyone. So I showed up that night through the service entrance, dressed in plain black pants and a white button-down shirt, with the catering company's logo, no makeup, hair pulled back, completely unremarkable. I'd done this 100 times before. Disappear into the background, be invisible, observe everything. But I wasn't invisible to Verity. She spotted me within the first hour, her voice cutting through the string quartet like a knife. "Oh my God, is that the event coordinator, working as a waitress?" Her laughter was loud, deliberate, designed to attract attention. Her socialite friends circled like sharks smelling blood, their designer dresses shimmering under the crystal chandeliers, while I stood there in my plain uniform, holding a tray of champagne flutes. I kept my head down, stayed in character. Every instinct screamed at me to respond, to defend myself, but I couldn't break cover. I had a job to do. People's lives depended on the intelligence I was gathering. So I swallowed my pride and kept serving drinks, even as Verity's mocking voice followed me through the ballroom. Then Dashiell saw me. I watched his face change from confusion to horror to something worse: embarrassment. He pulled me aside roughly, his fingers digging into my arm. "What are you doing here? Like this?" His voice was a harsh whisper, but his eyes were panicked. I stayed in character, fed him the cover story about needing extra money, about times being tight, but I could see him calculating the social cost of being associated with me right now, in front of his mother's investors and his family's elite circle. Lorelei appeared like a cold wind, her diamond necklace catching the light as she looked down at me. "Is this girl bothering you, darling?" The way she said "girl" made me feel like something she'd scraped off her shoe, and Dashiell, the man who'd promised to love me forever, who'd gotten down on one knee and called me his future, just stood there, silent. Then he turned away. I went back to work because that's what operators do. We complete the mission no matter what, but Verity wasn't done with me. She cornered me by the champagne table with her pack of friends, their laughter sharp and cruel. "I heard she was engaged to my brother. Can you imagine? A waitress?" They circled closer, and I knew what was coming before it happened. I saw Verity's hand reach for the champagne flute. I could have blocked it. My training made me fast enough. But I was undercover, and a waitress wouldn't have combat reflexes. The champagne hit my face like ice and humiliation. It soaked through my uniform, dripped down my neck, pooled at my feet. The ballroom fell silent except for the gasping whispers and Verity's delighted laughter. I stood there, trembling, not with shame, but with rage I couldn't release, and looked across the room at Dashiell. He saw everything. "And he did absolutely nothing." Lorelei approached with a napkin, her face arranged in fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Here, dear, clean yourself up. This is unfortunate." Then she leaned in close, her perfume suffocating, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. "That ring on your finger? It's a Crane family heirloom. We'll need that back. Dashiell will be marrying Cordelia Van Straten, someone more suitable." She snapped her fingers, and security guards appeared like trained dogs. "Consider this your termination, from catering and from our family." My hand shook as I twisted the engagement ring off my finger. The same ring I'd worn for months, the one I'd looked at during missions and reminded myself I had something worth coming home to. I placed it in Lorelei's outstretched palm, and she closed her fingers around it like she was reclaiming stolen property. The guards escorted me through the ballroom, past hundreds of staring faces, past Dashiell, who couldn't even look at me, past Verity, who was still smirking, out the service door and into the night air that felt like freedom and failure. All at once I stood outside, champagne still drying sticky on my skin, my entire world crumbling around me. 3 years of sacrifice, 7 years of training, a lifetime of proving myself, and I'd just been discarded like trash by people who never deserved to know the real me anyway. I was reaching for my phone when my concealed earpiece crackled to life. "Raina, we have a situation. Respond immediately." The devastation evaporated, replaced by pure focus. "Go ahead." My voice was steady now, controlled. This was my real language. My commander's voice was tense. "Armed hostile group just breached the building's perimeter. This isn't surveillance anymore. This is a hostage situation. Professional mercenaries, heavily armed. They've cut communications and blocked all exits. We're tracking 8 to 12 hostiles inside the ballroom right now." My blood went cold. Extraction timeline? I was already moving back toward the building, my mind calculating angles and entry points. 15 minutes for the tactical team, maybe 20 with traffic. His pause was heavy. You're the only operator on site, Captain. Those people in there have minutes, not 20. Then I heard it gunfire, sharp cracks that shattered the night, followed by screams that cut through the elegant music like reality tearing apart. I ran to the windows and saw everything through the glass-masked men in tactical gear, automatic weapons raised, moving through the ballroom with military precision. Guests on the floor, hands over their heads, the crystal chandeliers swaying from the concussion of gunfire. And there, on their knees with terror painted across their faces, were the Cranes Dashiell, Lorelei, Verity, the same people who'd just destroyed me. The lead mercenary's voice boomed through the ballroom. "Everyone stays down! This is a ransom operation! Cooperate and you live!" I watched him grab an elderly woman by her hair, watched Thornton Crane actually whimper, watched Verity's mascara run in black rivers down her face. Every tactical bone in my body was screaming at me to move, but there was another voice too, a quieter, angrier voice that whispered, "They deserve this walk away." I stood there for exactly 3 seconds, torn between the woman I'd trained to be and the woman who'd just had her heart shattered. Then I saw one of the catering staff, a young girl maybe 19 years old, sobbing quietly on the floor. Saw a musician trying to shield his elderly colleague, saw innocent people who had nothing to do with the Crane's cruelty. "Command, I'm going in." I ripped off the outer layer of my catering uniform, and underneath was everything I really was: tactical vest, matte black, fitted perfectly to my body, weapons holstered against my ribs, compact but lethal, the Commando patch on my shoulder, the one I'd earned through 2 years of hell that broke most candidates in the first month. My fingers moved on muscle memory, checking magazines, releasing safeties, pulling my hair into a tight braid that wouldn't obstruct my vision. The transformation took 15 seconds, from humiliated waitress to what I'd always been, a weapon with a heartbeat. I activated the emergency protocol on my watch, sending my location and status to command. Then I moved. The service corridors were my territory now, every shadow a tool, every sound catalogued and assessed. I knew these entry points from my earlier reconnaissance. The mercenaries were professionals, but they'd made one critical mistake. They assumed everyone inside was a victim. They had no idea I was here. The first guard was positioned at the service entrance, his back to the door. I came up behind him silent as smoke, one hand over his mouth, the other applying pressure to the carotid until his body went limp. I lowered him quietly, took his weapon, his radio, his extra ammunition. Now I could hear their communications. "Alpha Team, ballroom secure, hostages compliant, beginning wealth assessment on primary targets." They weren't just here for ransom. They were here to squeeze the richest people in the room for everything they had. I moved through the corridors like water, fluid and inevitable, every corner cleared, every sightline calculated. This was what I'd trained for. Not the politeness of dinner parties or the performance of being someone's acceptable fiancé. This, the moment when everything else falls away and there's only the mission, the training, and the absolute certainty that I'm the most dangerous person in this building. I reached a balcony position overlooking the ballroom and assessed the situation. 12 hostiles, not 8. They had the exits covered, weapons trained on the crowd. The lead mercenary, tall and broad, was dragging Lorelei to her feet by her arm. Her perfect composure was gone, replaced by raw animal fear. "Let's start with the rich bitch," he announced to his team. "Show them we're serious." Dashiell lurched forward, hands raised. "Please, don't hurt her. Take me instead." The desperation in his voice would have broken my heart hours ago. Now it was just noise. I accessed the commandeered PA system, my voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Armed hostiles, this is your only warning. Release the hostages, now." The ballroom froze, every head turned, searching for the source. The lead mercenary's eyes scanned the room until they found me, emerging from the shadows with my weapon raised and that commando patch clearly visible on my shoulder. For one beautiful moment, I watched Lorelei's face transform from terror to complete incomprehension. Her mouth actually fell open. That's the waitress?" The mercenary laughed, actually laughed, lowering his weapon slightly like I was a joke. They sent a girl? In catering clothes? He gestured to his team, and I could see them relaxing, dismissing me. That was their second mistake. I let the smallest smile touch my lips, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with happiness and everything to do with knowing exactly how this was going to end. I said, "Get down." Then I moved, and the ballroom exploded into controlled chaos that only I could navigate. This was my world now, and they were just visiting. The takedown lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of precision, training, and muscle memory taking over. I disarmed the first mercenary, used him as a shield, neutralized 2 more with controlled shots that echoed like thunder. Guests screamed and scrambled toward the exits I'd cleared, and through it all I kept moving, directing, protecting. One hostile tried to rush me hand-to-hand combat, brutal and efficient. He was bigger, but I was faster, better trained, and absolutely certain of every move. The final mercenary grabbed Verity, used her as a human shield, his weapon pressed against her temple. She was sobbing, makeup destroyed, the same face that had laughed at me hours ago now begging me with her eyes. "Let her go," I said, my voice steady. He sneered. "Or what?" I made the shot. Clean, professional. He dropped, and Verity collapsed into hysterics. My backup team stormed in 30 seconds later, securing the scene with military efficiency. My commander strode through the chaos, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "Captain Raina Ashford, status report?" "Captain." The word hung in the air like a revelation, and I watched it land on the Crane family like a bomb. Dashiell's face went pale. Lorelei's mouth opened and closed without sound. The paramedics were treating minor injuries, checking vitals, but everyone was staring at me, the waitress, the girl who wasn't good enough. Standing there with a weapon in my hand and a commando patch on my shoulder, having just saved every single one of their privileged lives, Dashiell approached me like I was a stranger, which I suppose I always had been to him. "Raina, you're military?" His voice cracked on my name. I holstered my weapon, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the firefight. "Special operations, counterterrorism. It's classified." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Why didn't you tell me?" And there it was, the question that missed the entire point. I couldn't. It's classified means classified, Dashiell. But more than that, you never trusted me enough to believe I was more than what you could see. Lorelei approached, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked small, shaken, human. "You saved our lives." I met her eyes without flinching. "I saved everyone's lives. That's my job. It's what I do when you're all sleeping safely in your mansions, planning your galas, deciding who's worthy of your family name." The words came out harder than I intended, but I was done pretending. "You judged me based on a uniform. Tonight you saw me in 2 different ones. Both were real. You just decided one had value and one didn't." Verity was next, her face blotchy from crying, her designer dress torn. "I'm so sorry. I was horrible to you. The champagne, the things I said." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No satisfaction in her apology. No anger left to fuel my resentment. Just emptiness where she used to have the power to hurt me. "You were horrible, but I didn't do this for an apology or for gratitude. I did it because innocent people deserve to live. That's the difference between us, Verity. You act based on who's watching. I act based on who I am." Dashiell pulled the family ring from his pocket, the one I'd returned hours ago. "Can we start over? I was wrong about everything." I looked at that ring, remembering every promise it represented, every lie I'd told myself about making it work. Then I pulled his mother's heirloom from my tactical vest pocket, where I'd kept it safe despite everything, and placed it in his palm. "You wanted someone established? I've been establishing safety for this country while you were establishing cocktail hours. You never saw me, Dashiell. You saw what you wanted to see. A pretty addition to your life that wouldn't challenge you or your family's expectations. And when I needed you to stand up for me even once, you turned away." My voice didn't shake. I'd cried all the tears I had for this man. I deserve someone who sees my value even when I'm wearing a catering uniform, even when his family disapproves, even when it's hard. He opened his mouth to argue, but I was already walking away. My team was waiting outside, and one of them handed me a tactical jacket to cover the torn catering shirt. "Hell of a night, Captain," he said with a slight smile. I looked back at the building one last time, at the shattered glass and the flashing emergency lights, at the life I'd almost settled for, just another Tuesday. 6 months later, I got promoted to major. My team threw me a party at a dive bar that served the best wings in the city, and I laughed until my sides hurt with people who knew exactly who I was and valued me for it. I never heard from Dashiell again, though I did see an announcement in the society pages about his engagement to Cordelia Van Straten. They looked perfect together, perfectly matched, perfectly shallow, perfectly someone else's problem. I learned something that night at the gala. The people who mock you for where you are have no idea where you've been or where you're going. They see the surface and think that's the whole story, but your value isn't determined by who recognizes it. It's determined by who you are when no one's watching, when there's no audience, when there's only you and your choices and the person you see in the mirror. I chose to save them anyway. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserve to be the kind of person who does the right thing, even when it hurts. Even when it would be easier to walk away. Even when the people I'm saving are the same ones who threw champagne in my face and laughed at my uniform, because at the end of the day, I don't wear the uniform for them. I wear it for me. And for every person who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because someone couldn't see past the surface, we're out there. Protecting, serving, saving lives, while they're busy judging us by our clothes, our jobs, or our bank accounts. And when the real test comes, when everything falls apart and the champagne stops flowing and the crystal chandeliers are swaying from gunfire, they'll finally see what we've always been. The ones who show up, the ones who stand between chaos and innocent lives, the ones who wear our real uniform underneath whatever costume we need to complete the mission. They laughed at my simple uniform until I unzipped it and showed them the Commando patch, and then they stopped laughing. They stopped judging. They stopped seeing me as less than, because in that moment, I was the only thing standing between them and death. That's the thing about underestimating people. Eventually, reality shows up, and reality doesn't care about your assumptions. If this story reminded you that you're stronger than anyone's judgment, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me about a time you proved someone wrong, when someone underestimated you and you showed them exactly who you were. And remember, your value isn't determined by who recognizes it. It's determined by who you are when no one's watching, when there's no applause, when there's only you and your choices, and the strength you didn't know you had until you needed it. Stay strong. Stay true. Never let someone's limited vision become your reality. And remember, the people laughing at you today might need you to save them tomorrow. Be ready, be excellent, be undeniable. I'll see you in the next one.